The 80s had a talent for hiding heartbreak inside bright, friendly cartoons. You'd sit down ready for laser battles, goofy sidekicks, and whatever sugary cereal was fueling your morning. And then out of nowhere, the show would hit you with a scene so sad, it felt like the universe paused for a second. Kids weren't prepared, parents weren't prepared. Honestly, the writers probably weren't prepared either. These moments came out of the clear blue Saturday skies and left a whole generation staring at the screen wondering why a fun little cartoon suddenly felt like an emotional uppercut. And hey, if any of these scenes still live somewhere in the back closet of your brain, feel free to hit super thanks. The DVD links are down below if you want to revisit the exact moments that once had you blinking way too fast for an 8-year-old. Let's count them down. Here are the top 10 saddest cartoon moments of the 80s. The ones that stuck, the ones that hurt, and the ones that absolutely did not need to go that hard. At number 10, He-Man, Orco's disappearance. Orco was the character everybody counted on to lighten the mood. Even if Skeletor showed up with some dramatic new plan, Orco found a way to trip over his own cage or misfire a spell, and somehow make the whole moment less terrifying. He was the heart of the room, the one person who wore his nerves on the outside and still tried anyway.
Hey, you're the bad wizard, Asrock!
Maybe that's why his disappearance lands harder than almost anything He-Man ever tackled. The moment itself isn't flashy. There's no giant explosion or tragic farewell. 1 second, Orco is doing what he always does, trying to help, and the next, he's swallowed by a burst of unstable magic and dropped somewhere that doesn't look or sound like anything he knows. It's the shock that gets you, the suddenness. Suddenly, the whole scene just feels empty. He talks to himself because it's better than hearing nothing. He cracks jokes that don't really land, even for him, because silence makes his imagination run wild. And as an audience, you can tell he's putting on a brave face purely out of habit. He's trying to convince himself that someone is already on the way, that He-Man has a plan, that this is all temporary. But the longer he floats there, the more that confidence thins out. The sad part isn't even the danger, it's the feeling that he might have slipped through the cracks, that he's out of sight and out of mind. Kids pick up on that instinctively. You watch Orco drift in this empty unknown, and suddenly he isn't the goofy magician anymore. He's the friend who wandered too far at the grocery store, standing between shelves hoping someone realizes he's missing. He does make it back, of course. The show moves forward. But that small window of loneliness stays with you in a way the writers probably didn't expect. At number 9, Thundercats. Panthro walks away. Panthro was the anchor of the Thundercats, the guy who didn't need a speech to show he cared. He built vehicles, repaired their damage, and kept everyone moving, even when they were arguing like siblings in the backseat of a long road trip. When trouble hit, Panthro didn't flinch. When something broke, he fixed it. So the idea of him feeling pushed aside never crossed anyone's mind until the episode that proved otherwise.
Pretty sure I can scrounge enough metal and equipment from the wreck to build us a thunder tank.
Good idea. We can always count on you, Panthro.
No problem. Main thing in an emergency is to stay calm.
It begins quietly. Panthro finishes yet another repair job, steps back, and realizes no one even looked up. Not a nod, not a thank you. Just the team sprinting off into the next challenge like he was part of the scenery. You can see the moment it hits him. Not anger, just that slow disappointment that creeps in when you realize you've been taken for granted. He doesn't explode or deliver a dramatic monologue. He just stops. He puts the tools down, takes a breath, and decides that if the others didn't notice what he brings to the table, maybe he shouldn't be sitting at the table at all. It's such a quiet decision that the other Thundercats don't even understand what happened at first. They stand there with this awkward confusion, the kind that comes when someone strong finally admits they're tired. Kids weren't ready for the emotional honesty in a show about sword-wielding cat heroes. Watching Panthro walk away felt strangely close to real life. That sinking feeling when a stable, dependable adult finally steps out of a room because they've had enough. It leaves a hollow spot in the group, the kind you don't fix with a pep talk or a magic artifact. Once he's gone, the team suddenly sees how much he held together. At number 8, DuckTales, Scrooge trapped by Magica. Scrooge McDuck isn't supposed to look fragile. This is the same duck who dives into piles of coins like they're pillows, wrestles treasure away from ancient traps, and outsmarts villains before they even finish monologuing. He's loud, stubborn, fearless. At least that's the version kids grew up with. But the day Magica Dispel finally cornered him, the entire show tilted on its axis. She doesn't just defeat him, she makes him sit with himself. That's the part that catches you off guard. Scrooge, stuck in a magical prison he can't bribe, bash, or bargain his way out of, suddenly looks smaller. The confidence drains from his voice. He doesn't bark orders or crack jokes. He listens while Magica dissects the one thing he never wanted to admit, that he may have spent so long chasing money and protecting his precious dime that he didn't pay attention to the people who cared about him.
Bless me bagpipes! Curse you, Dispel!
No, Scrooge. Curse you!
It's strange seeing him still, because Scrooge is never still. His mind usually runs a mile a minute, planning the next move, calculating every angle. But here, he has nowhere to look except inward. And the nephews feel it too. Their panic isn't dramatic. It's this quiet worry that their uncle, the invincible Scrooge, might not come home this time. Kids didn't always understand the layers, but they understood the fear. Scrooge didn't just lose a fight, he lost the part of himself that always knew what to do next. And watching him sit in that cramped, magical room, forced to face the consequences of his choices, was oddly adult for a show that usually involved theme songs and treasure maps. And if the fall of Scrooge's confidence shook you, the next moment shook something deeper, the feeling of losing a hero entirely. At number 7, Transformers, the death of Optimus Prime. Most cartoons avoided real consequences. Heroes fell, but they didn't stay down. They got patched up, powered up, or saved at the last second. So Optimus Prime's final moments in Transformers the movie felt like someone suddenly flipped the rulebook upside down. The battle that injures him is already intense, but nothing prepares you for the quiet that follows. Optimus is laid on a table, surrounded by Autobots who look completely lost. This isn't the booming, confident leader delivering rallying speeches. His voice is softer, measured. He speaks like someone who already knows how this ends. He passes the matrix of leadership to Ultra Magnus.
I shall pass the matrix of leadership as it was passed to me.
But Prime, I'm just a soldier. I'm not worthy.
Not with triumphant music, but with the weight of someone passing on the things he's been responsible for his whole life. And then his breathing slows. His colors fade, almost like the life is draining from him panel by panel. His hand drops, his eyes dim. The room doesn't erupt into screams, it sinks into silence. Kids didn't know cartoons were allowed to do this. The hero wasn't injured or missing, he was gone, and the movie didn't give audiences a cushion to soften the impact. For many, this was the first time a fictional character's death hit like something real. Some kids cried, some got angry, some just sat there frozen, trying to understand why the one character who always knew what to do suddenly didn't come back. And somehow, this isn't even the saddest Transformers moment of the film. It's only the one everyone remembers first. Before we get to that final shocker, though, we need to step into the world of pastel ponies and the surprisingly grim turn their story once took. At number 6, My Little Pony, Midnight Castle Separation. If you were a kid who loved My Little Pony, you probably expected gentle adventures, sparkles, and maybe a villain whose biggest threat was messing up a rainbow. Rescue at Midnight Castle clearly didn't get that memo. The moment T-Rex storms in and snatches the ponies, the entire tone shifts from cheerful fantasy to something closer to a dark fairy tale. The separation scene is one that sticks. One moment the ponies are together, nervous but hopeful, and the next they're being dragged away to T-Rex monsters. There's no heroic speech or last-second escape, just wide eyes and the dawning realization that they're being taken somewhere they might never return from. What makes it worse is the transformation. T-Rex isn't content to lock them up. He plans to twist them into dragons under his control.
Behold the power of darkness!
The idea that your friend could come back as something unrecognizable? That's heavy stuff for kids who thought the biggest emotional hurdle was picking a favorite pony. The ones left behind aren't brave warriors ready to charge into battle. They're frightened, overwhelmed, trying to process what happened in a world that suddenly feels much less safe. Their fear isn't exaggerated or dramatic in any way. It's quiet, almost too real for a show with pastel-colored palettes. Children watching felt a specific kind of dread, the fear of losing someone not just physically, but losing who they are. The ponies don't just miss their friends, they're terrified their friends are gone in every way that matters. And Midnight Castle doesn't lighten the mood right away. It lets the sadness sit. It lets the worry breathe. Which is why, decades later, it's still the scene that people talk about when they remember the moment My Little Pony stopped being cute and started being emotional. At number 5, G.I. Joe, The Soft Master's Death. If you grew up with G.I. Joe, you probably assume the show lived in that safe little bubble where everyone parachuted out at the last second and nobody ever took real damage. Lasers flew everywhere, but they always hit the ground or a rock or a conveniently placed metal crate. Characters didn't die, they retreated. So when the Soft Master's final moment arrived, it landed like the writers had suddenly decided, all right, time to grow these kids up a little. The Soft Master isn't just another Joe, he's Storm Shadow's teacher. This older guy Storm Shadow always respected, even before any of the ninja stuff. And in the scene where he steps into danger, there's no swelling music or heroic pose. He simply acts because that's what mentors do. They protect, even when there's nothing left in it for them. When he's struck down, the shock doesn't come from the violence. It comes from how final it feels. No glimmer of hope, no maybe he'll be okay. Characters in this show don't come back from this kind of moment. Kids weren't used to that. They sat there waiting for the usual twist that would undo it, and nothing came. Then the camera finds Storm Shadow.
Okay, Storm Shadow, it's wipeout time!
He doesn't explode with rage or deliver a dramatic speech. His grief folds inward, and somehow that restraint hurts more than any dramatic outburst would have. The guilt settles over him like another layer of shadow. This episode didn't just show loss, it made the characters live in it. And for a show built on action figures and catchphrases, that honesty stung in a way no battle ever did. At number 4, The Real Ghostbusters, The Boogeyman is Coming. Some cartoon villains are scary because they're big or slimy or have 10 glowing eyes. The Boogeyman from The Real Ghostbusters is scary because he walks straight into a fear kids already believed in. You didn't need to understand his backstory or his powers. You just had to be a child who once stared at the closet door at night, convinced something was breathing behind it. What makes this episode unforgettable is how seriously it treats that fear. The Boogeyman doesn't roar or stomp around like a monster auditioning for a Halloween costume contest. He steps into the room like he owns it. Bent posture, too wide smile, a voice that sounds like it's inches from your ear, even when he's across the screen. He talks the way nightmares talk, that strange mix of playful and threatening that makes your skin crawl. But the sadness of the episode comes from the kids he targets.
That wasn't nice. Not nice at all.
They're already worn down before the Ghostbusters even arrive. You can see it in how they cling to their parents, how their voices shake even when they're trying to explain what's happening. These aren't comedic scaredy cat characters. They look like they haven't slept in days. The Ghostbusters try their best, but even they seem thrown off by how personal this villain feels. They're used to Slimers and apparitions, not a creature built specifically from children's anxieties. When the kids finally break down and admit how scared they are, it hits harder than any proton blast. You realize the Boogeyman isn't threatening the world, he's threatening childhood itself. And in a show full of ghosts, this is the one that felt a little too real. At number 3, the Smurfs. Papa Smurf goes missing. You never expect the Smurfs to get emotional. It's a show where the biggest problem most days is somebody smurfing something they shouldn't have smurfed. It's light, safe, predictable comfort TV. And that's exactly why the episode where Papa Smurf disappears hits so strangely hard. Papa Smurf isn't just the leader. He's the reassurance, the problem solver, the calm in the middle of every blue-colored storm.
Unfortunately, I have had unsuccessful results with my latest experiments, so I must travel to the Mountain of Mists for some special roots.
Oh, Papa Smurf, please don't go!
So when he suddenly vanishes, there's this eerie stillness that settles over the village. The Smurfs don't fall apart immediately. They try to keep it together, the way kids do when they're scared but don't want to admit it out loud. But as the minutes pass, you can see the cracks forming. Brainy tries to take charge, but nobody really listens. Smurfette starts worrying out loud. A few Smurfs wander around the village as if Papa might just be hiding behind a mushroom somewhere, waiting to surprise them. Others sit quietly, staring at nothing in particular. That quiet little panic kids get when something important goes missing. The world around them suddenly seems bigger and darker. The forest feels less friendly. The familiar paths feel unfamiliar. Even the background music pulls back, leaving more silence than usual, like the show is trying to make the audience sit with the same emptiness the characters feel. Kids watching didn't always understand the story behind the disappearance, but they absolutely understood the feeling. Losing the person who holds your world together, even temporarily, scrambles something inside you. Papa Smurf eventually returns, of course, but while he's gone, the show lets the sadness breathe. It lets the village feel lost. And that little stretch of emptiness is what made this episode linger long after the credits rolled. At number 2, TMNT, Splinter trapped between dimensions. This scene sticks with people because of how plain it is. There's no big build-up. Splinter is just standing there 1 second, everyone is doing their usual thing, and the machine Donnie has been fiddling with starts acting up. You expect smoke or sparks or some turtle joke about the smell of burning circuits, but the camera stays on Splinter instead. He isn't thrown back or blown across the room. He just starts to thin out, like someone turned down the contrast on him.
If those criminals did take Raphael and Michelangelo, it would certainly indicate that they're in league with Shredder.
But why, Master? True, the butcher gets to rob the city blind, but what's in it for Shredder?
The turtles freeze because they don't actually understand what they're seeing. Splinter tries to speak, but his voice sounds like it's coming from under a door. He's trying to stay calm, not for himself, but for them. And that's what makes it uncomfortable. Splinter is always the one who knows what to do. So if he looks unsure, it automatically feels wrong. They look like kids who've had something important taken from them. Leo keeps glancing at Donnie, hoping he'll fix it. Donnie is already digging through wires he doesn't really have a plan for. Raph stays quiet, which is rare, and Mikey just keeps calling for Splinter like maybe volume will solve the problem. Splinter fades out completely, but they can still hear him, which somehow makes the whole thing worse. He's not gone, but he isn't reachable either. It's that weird middle place that doesn't feel like a cliffhanger, it just feels wrong. Kids watching didn't care about dimensions. They just saw a family lose the person who held them together. And the show didn't offer a quick emotional exit ramp. It just let the moment sit there. At number 1, Transformers, the 1986 movie, opening massacre. People always talk about Optimus dying later in the movie, but honestly, the thing that messed everyone up happened before that. The movie starts, and instead of the usual robot shoot lasers, nobody gets hurt, you're watching a whole planet get eaten. No jokes, no cutaways, just gone. Before you even process that, the attack on the Autobots begins. And this is where a lot of kids realize this wasn't the Saturday morning show. Characters who had been around for years go down fast. Not dramatic, I'll be back someday moments, just done. Prowl drops in a way that doesn't look like something a cartoon would normally show. Ironhide tries to pull himself up and gets blasted. Ratchet doesn't get a last line. It all happens almost too quickly to register, which is probably why it hits so hard.
Hey, Cop, don't you think we have better things to do now than tell old stories?
Like what?
Like maybe figure out how we're gonna rescue our friends and then save Cybertron.
No! Tell story!
The strangest part is how quiet the whole thing feels. Not literally, there are explosions everywhere, but emotionally. The movie doesn't pause for anyone to react. It just keeps moving, and the audience is stuck trying to catch up. Kids weren't used to this. The show never had consequences like this. Characters fell over, got scuffed up, but they didn't stay gone. Here, there's no wink at the camera. No, they'll be fine next week. And because it happens so early, you spend the rest of the movie waiting for some explanation or undo button that never comes. By the time Optimus dies later, kids were already thrown off balance. The opening had already taught them the movie wasn't going to protect their feelings. It's not the saddest moment because of music or a speech or anything dramatic. It's sad because it feels blunt and matter of fact, like the film wasn't interested in softening anything for you. It just showed the events and left you to sit with them. And that's the list. Funny how you can go years without thinking about this stuff. And then one scene pops back into your head like it's been waiting in a drawer the whole time. The 80s really didn't hold back. Bright colors on the outside, heartbreak tucked neatly underneath. If any of these moments hit you a little harder than expected, Super Thanks is there if you want to support the channel. And for the brave souls who actually want to rewatch some of this chaos, I put the DVD links down below. Just don't blame me if the nostalgia is a little heavier than you remembered. And let me know in the comments which moment you remember the most, or if there's another scene I completely forgot about. Thanks for hanging out today. I'll see you in the next deep dive. Hopefully one that doesn't remind us how emotionally unprepared we were as kids. Until next time.